One of the pictures on my wall was painted by my cousin Dot of the log cabin that my grandparents built when they homesteaded in Manitoba around 1899, I think it was. I believe that I was conceived in that log cabin because my father and mother didn't have a home of their own yet. Dad started building as soon as he knew I was on the way, and he built a frame home close by to the log cabin where he had been living before that. We lived in the log cabin and the frame house, which later was taken over by my Uncle Charlie when he came home from the war. And Dad bought what we call the old Bell place, and I lived on it until I left home. And my brother Alan still owns the old Bell place, and they farm it. So it's been in the family about, well, close to 100 years, I guess. It's 3 miles from Bozeman, a small town in Manitoba, and 3 miles from the Croppertop School, where I went to school as a child, and I later taught at Croppertop's, taught my brothers and sisters and my cousins. But I took my high school in Bozeman, and then I went to Swan River for a year to take my grade 12. And after that, I went to Winnipeg to normal school to become a teacher. And that's when I came back to Croppertop's again. My whole life was centered around that small area up until I got married when I was 23, I think it was. So it's a big part of my memories. After when I got married, I came back again actually, because my husband Lorne. After I married Lorne, Scotty as we called him then, I had gone to school with him, Gladys Taylor, and he joined up the services we were married in 1940, and he was in the Army then. He had joined up about May 1940, and we were married in August 1940. And he went overseas about a year later, and by that time, I was pregnant with our first son, and I came back home to Manitoba, and I lived in Winnipeg while I was waiting for my baby with Nora Hall, who was a dear friend of the family, and Jean and Nora are still my friends. But when the baby died, I had to find something to do because Lorne was overseas. So I went back teaching for about 6 months at Croppertop. And then I applied to join the Canadian Women's Army Corps. And I left about February, I would say, to join the Army. And for the next 3 years, I was stationed for a while in Vermilion, Alberta. And then I was sent to Toronto to take a drafting course. And then I was posted back to Regina and spent the rest of the war there. I was in Regina when we got word that the 5th Div was coming home from overseas. Now, they called it the 5th Division. That was a familiar term in those days, and Scotty and a lot of the boys from Bozeman and Swan River were all in the 5th Div, and they nearly all came home at the same time. When I got home, word that he was coming home, then I started, I put in for a discharge from the Army, And they gave me a month's leave so that I could go to Winnipeg and meet him when he got off the train. We both got our discharges on October the 25th. It was kind of a coincidence. He got his, I think, in the morning, and I got mine in the afternoon. So it was something that we both got at the same day. And then we went back to Swan River, and your dad and Scotty worked with his father to take off the flax crop that I had on the land that I had bought out of our money while he was overseas. So by the time the fall had come around, Scotty had decided that he wanted to go back to university. So we went to Winnipeg and bought a house there we got a loan from Scotty's dad and my father, enough for a down payment on a house in Winnipeg. And Lorne went to United College to finish off his grade 11. He had not been able to finish that because he broke his leg at exam time. And his marks weren't very good, so they wouldn't give him a pass. So he had to take that over again. And then he took grade 12. And then we decided he wanted to go to university then, and we decided it would be Toronto. Because during the war, we had both spent quite a bit of time in that area of Ontario, and we liked it. By that time, we had our first son, born in July 18th, 1956. I shouldn't say our first son. Our first baby had died, but our first living son. And so the three of us, Dennis and Lorne, as I called him after he had a son, I thought it was a more mature name for him to have than Scotty. So he was more often called Lorne then. So we went to Toronto, and this farm that I had bought while Lorne was overseas, I had saved the money that I got as an army wife's allowance. It produced a good crop, about $2,000, I think it was, we got out of that, which was big money in those days. And it was a down payment on a house in Toronto. And we lived there for, our second son, Lorne, was born there, May the 15th, 1949. Yeah, did I say 50 for Dennis? I always get that mixed up. It should be 1946 and then 1949. And so by that time, Lorne had finished, when Lorne Jr. was about 2 years old, Lorne Sr. finished his university education, and he got a job in Sherbrooke, Quebec, with Ingersoll Rand, and we sold our house in Toronto and bought one in Sherbrooke.